total disregard for facts, for data, for scientific evidence in favour of protecting ego, reputation, furthering careers, and frankly, a load of willy waving by a bunch of middle-aged men, David Davis, and frankly, a load of willy waving by a bunch of middle-aged men, David Davis, and frankly, a load of willy waving by a bunch of middle-aged men, David Davis. Files we're just discussing, and so many of the revelations we've seen. I mean, the summary of it is really the government frightened the living daylights out. I think the phrase "frightened the pants off us," as the words of Simon Case, the cabinet secretary, to get us to comply with lockdowns. They then kind of got stuck in this cycle of trying to justify their actions, not get ahead of public opinion, not come out of lockdowns, or be forced into lockdowns, even when it would appear Boris Johnson was apparently thinking he didn't want them. Well, one day, the next day he would want them. I mean, and that loads of the decision-making was not based on the science, as they kept claiming, cap T, cap S, but actually on ego, on reputation, on not wanting to look like you got things wrong before, ego, as they kept them. I mean, and that loads of the decision-making was not based on the science, as they kept claiming, cap T, cap S, but actually on ego, on reputation, on not wanting to look like you got things wrong before. People were forced to, as we revelations on the front page today, there was scientific evidence that you didn't need to isolate for 14 days or 10 days. You could isolate for just 5 days. You took a test every day. You could be out and about if you'd been in contact with someone who'd had COVID. But no, they decided not to take it down to 5 days because that would imply that the government had been getting it wrong, as opposed to acknowledging, actually, it turns out the latest evidence is this. A total disregard for facts, for data, for scientific evidence in favour of protecting ego, reputation, furthering careers, and frankly, a load of willy waving by a bunch of middle-aged men, David Davis, and frankly, a load of willy waving by a bunch of middle-aged men, David Davis. What do you make of those reports?
Well, first off, I'm not surprised about the lack of scientific basis. We saw quite a lot of this early on. I mean, you may remember, I wrote about it, Neil Ferguson's forecasts were treated as facts when they weren't. They were fantasy, and all the way through this, there's been, I'll be frank with you, Whitehall generally, not just Matt Hancock, Whitehall generally is really crap at handling science and technology. It's just no good at it, and the Prime Minister today is announcing, has found it necessary to announce, we're going to enlarge on our capability in science and technology because we're not much, as a government, not just our government, any government in the last 50 years is poor at it. So you got that problem. Secondly, literally since March 23rd, 2020, when we had the Coronavirus Emergency Act, we effectively crippled Parliament. We effectively gave all these powers to these ministers to, as you say, willy wave with them, and that was the outcome. Indeed, you may not know, in fact nobody knows, I think that I asked for all of the data they gathered in terms of focus groups and opinion polls. The government back in 2020 spent more money than any previous government on opinion polls and focus groups. You have to wonder why. What were they doing? So I asked them, can you publish them, please? And they've refused. For 2 years, they categorically refused.
Sorry,